Ladies and gentlemen, this is a warning. Thank you.
If you've ever traveled at night, you likely know the worry of finding an open gas station to refuel, maybe to get a drink or use the bathroom. It's a simple, almost mundane part of the journey, something most of us take for granted. Today, you likely don't even need to interact with the gas station clerk. But prior to the 1970s, self-serve gas pumps were uncommon, forcing the usually single late-night attendant into a face-to-face interaction with whomever pulled in. While drivers may only have one gas station stop on their journey, these clerks might have dozens or more each night. While most would likely involve some brisk chit-chat and that was that, perhaps inevitably, some trouble might arise. These isolated stations on the roads outside of major cities made for enticing locations for robbers. But for the then still quiet rural roads outside of Columbus, Ohio, one person would take things a step further. Over the course of a single year, under the cover of night, someone would begin targeting these lonely gas stations along US Route 40, which ran east to west through the city. While it first appeared robbery was their motive as well, it soon became apparent that money was an afterthought. This person was looking to kill. Ballistic evidence would connect the gas station killer to another murder in the city. But despite a single survivor in these attacks identifying a man he was certain shot him, no one would ever be convicted in what has become known as the Columbus gas station murders.
Goes on in San Francisco for the man known as the Zodiac Killer.
There could be a serial killer in Chicago.
The Oakland County child killer.
Phantom killer.
Frankfurt slasher.
4 children have now been murdered.
Has killed 5 and says he's going to kill again.
15 brutally murdered young women.
The pattern is the same.
One by one.
The death count started rising.
A man in a mask robbed, tied, and stabbed them.
Strangled, stuffed in burlap bags.
It is highly unlikely that these women were murdered by separate men.
Where will the killer strike next?
Police can't answer who or why.
That's the question that we'll never know.
I don't want to live the rest of my life wondering if this person's going to be caught.
I believe that there's someone out there that has knowledge.
And he's probably still at large.
If you know our own road, you know we value our privacy. In our personal life, it's not always easy to maintain. Whether we know it or not, sites will mine our data like full name, email, health records, and more, which they will sell to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who wants to snoop. That's why we started using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows us which data brokers are selling our personal information and automatically submits opt-out requests on our behalf. This not only reduces the amount of spam you'll get, but protects against hackers who can use this information to gain access to our social media, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also provides a ton of other features bundled into one easy-to-use app at an affordable price. You get antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more without needing to bother with different apps. We all have one or more of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. And if you're a regular viewer, you'll know how often that happens. Like 24-hour security, motion sensors, and guard dogs, Aura is always on, doing the hard work of keeping my info safe so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. Relaxing. RuneRoad values our privacy, and we also value yours. Go to aura.com/runeroad to start a free 2-week trial, also linked below in the description. Columbus, Ohio was a city in transition in the 1960s. With a long manufacturing history, this decade saw growth and social changes to an increasingly important urban center. While at the same time, a greater push for suburbanization would see the downtown area population decrease, as many American cities were dealing with at the same time. Several urban renewal projects would be helmed in the decade, along with the still under construction Interstate 70 and 71 highways, ever steadily reaching closer to the central Ohio area, which would allow for easier access to other metropolitan regions in the state and overall country. But in 1965, those highways had not yet replaced the smaller roads, like arteries that spanned out from downtown. One such artery was US 40. Built as the first federally funded interstate road, its history dates back to the early 1800s as the first continuous road to reach the West. Its popularity had been on a downward decline for the past 9 years when Interstate 70 first began construction, but it was still a heavily traveled road in the 1960s and had earned the name Main Street America. Over the ensuing years, obviously, a great many changes have been made to the landscape of this road, such as this exchange on Interstate 270. It is here, where this radio tower now stands, that the Payless gas station sat at the time. Located 6 miles east of Columbus, Whitehall, Ohio had just become a city the decade prior and was experiencing a rapid growth, going from just over 4,000 residents in mostly farmland to over 20,000 by 1960, making it the fastest growing city in the nation as veterans from World War II flocked to the new affordable housing developments here. But this section of the road still had a few years before I-270 would arrive and the rest of suburbia would hit. It was September 3rd, 1965 when 48-year-old Raymond Sigler was working the night shift at the gas station here. Though he had been left partially paralyzed by polio when he was an infant, Raymond had learned how to get around on his own just fine. Around 4 a.m. that morning, a dirty 1960s gray Chevrolet Corvair would pull into the station. After getting his car filled, the young Caucasian male driver would pull a gun. After taking the roughly $90 from Raymond's pockets, the gunman would order him to the men's restroom and to place his hands against the wall when he fired 3 shots, one entering Sigler's jaw and the others in the back of his head. Miraculously, Raymond remained conscious but paralyzed on the bathroom floor, pretending to be dead as the gunman left and drove west towards Columbus. Another person stopping for gas shortly after would find the man and phone police before fleeing. As officers responded at 4:48 a.m., one car racing to the scene from nearby Reynoldsburg would crash into another car, killing that driver. Raymond would spend a month paralyzed in the hospital, where he was able to give police the description of his attacker. But for reasons unspecified, they do not believe his description is totally accurate, but more of a general description. The gun, however, was described as a revolver the shooter removed from a small brown leather pouch. Though it would have only cost about $5 or $6, the toll this gun was about to claim would turn deadly. This McDonald's at the corner of Grant Avenue and US 40 in downtown Columbus is where the former certified oil gas station sat on Saturday, October 2nd, 1965. Just 3 days prior, 19-year-old Chester Joseph Scowden had begun working his first night shift here. At age 17, the high school dropout had won the lightweight novice class Golden Gloves boxing championship, but 2 years later had hung up the gloves for his family, his wife already pregnant with their 3rd child. Though the station closed at 1 a.m., Chester was working on his end-of-shift business report about an hour later when he would let someone into the service station. It would prove to be a fatal mistake. Sometime shortly after, a passing patrol car would notice a pair of feet on the ground protruding from the open front door. Based on the scene, police theorized that Scowden had handed over his wallet and about $80 worth of money of sales and was in the process of handing over his other pocket that had change when the robber fired a shot straight into his heart. This time, wanting to ensure the victim was dead, that man would fire another shot into the back of his skull. Certified Oil would put up a $1,000 reward for information, but the crime would quickly be forgotten about as the news was awash in the civil rights movement and Vietnam War protests across 80 cities in the country this month. Just a week after the murder, the first refugees that Fidel Castro released from Cuba would arrive on Florida shores. On November 8th, American Airlines 383 would crash outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, killing all but 4 people on board. A day later, a blackout would leave numerous New England states and part of Canada without power. But on Thursday, November 11th, another murder would occur just west of Columbus that would lead police to immediately recall Charles Scowden and provide the first inkling that a serial killer was stalking the Discovery City. The 41-year-old Claude Quisenberry had recently moved to London, Ohio, from Kentucky and began working in construction. The Purple Heart recipient and father of two had just begun his new job at the Cosaline Oil Company gas station along US 40, about a quarter-mile east of the village of West Jefferson, which itself is about 14 miles west of Columbus. His brother would drop him off for his fourth day on the job at 9 p.m. on Wednesday the 10th, at what today is the M.L. Doherty's auto sales office. It was around 5:36 a.m. the following morning when two men pulled into the station and found Claude lying dead on the service center floor. They would phone police anonymously before fleeing the scene. Investigators from Columbus were called to the scene, as similarities to their Scowden murder were noted. The station showed no signs of a struggle. About $150 had been taken from the cash register, but money in Claude's pocket and a locked cash box in plain sight were left untouched. When his brother returned to pick him up at 7 a.m., he would learn Claude had died from 4 gunshots, 2 in his chest, 1 in his neck, and 1 to the back of his head. Police noted that in both murders, a .25 caliber bullet had been used. So they sent them to the Ohio Bureau of Investigation, who confirmed they were fired by the same gun. Grooves on the bullets indicated that the gun used was a Spanish-made, pearl-handled .25 caliber that was either manufactured by Buffalo, Unique, or Looking Glass Arms. Police stated that the Raymond Sigler case was being considered linked, though they could not confirm, as the bullets were lodged too near his spine and could not be safely removed. Another case they were looking into was that of 36-year-old Elmer Clifford. It was the night of August 22, 1965, when Clifford would bring coffee to the State Highway Patrol Post in Ashland, Ohio. As he chatted with officers, a call came in that a motorist had run out of gas along I-71, the very highway that was still being constructed heading straight down to Columbus, 82 miles to the southwest. Known for his generosity, Clifford volunteered to head to the gas station he owned and operated, where he would grab a tank of gas to bring to the driver. 17 minutes later, police would receive a phone call from neighbors of the gas station, which was formerly located where a Perkins restaurant sits on the east side of I-71, along Route 250. The neighbors reported hearing gunshots and seeing a green tractor-trailer truck with 1 or 2 men inside shortly before they went over to check and found Elmer dead. It appeared as though he had interrupted a burglary in process and was shot 3 times in the heart, once in the cheek, and once between the eyes. $750 worth of cash he had been carrying from his day's sales had been taken from his body. Police believe the burglar had broken in through a fire door and into a safe before Clifford arrived, next taking his money and forcing him into the field behind the gas station, where they shot him with a .32 caliber Harrington and Richardson pistol manufactured in 1900. The bullets had been customized by shortening them to fit in the chamber. Hitchhikers seen in the area were tracked down to Cincinnati and another to California before cleared. But the local sheriff stated he believed the killer to have been a local who was known to Clifford. Though over a dozen people were given lie detector tests, no one was arrested, and less than 2 weeks later, the attack on Raymond Sigler occurred. On November 3rd, 8 days before Claude Quisenberry was murdered, Clifford's gas station would be burglarized yet again overnight, but police were never able to link the crimes to the Columbus murders. It was December 4th, 1965, when a patrol car in Richmond, Ohio spotted a vehicle matching one that was reported as stolen from Columbus, almost 200 miles away. When officers stopped at the Clark gas station to question the occupants, a gunfight would erupt, leaving 2 officers and both men wounded. Those men, brothers David and Gary Kirk, would steal the police vehicle and attempt to escape before they were eventually stopped and taken to the hospital to treat their wounds. David had just been released from prison in March for auto theft and burglary, while Gary had served time previously also for car theft. Police would question them in the gas station murders, but could only link them to 2 separate robberies in Columbus and another 2 in the state for which they were convicted in early 1966. Yet again, the Columbus murders would return to under the radar as President Lyndon Johnson ordered more soldiers into Vietnam over the coming months, totaling 250,000 by the beginning of May. But 82 miles north of Columbus, in the also rapidly expanding city of Findlay, Ohio, the mystery of the gas station murders was about to take another twist. On Friday, May 6, 1966, 32-year-old Elizabeth Davenport would last be seen leaving her home on Crandon Avenue in the Upper Arlington suburb of Columbus to spend the weekend in the city of Lima. But when she did not return home, her husband reported her missing on Monday. Police would issue a statewide bulletin for her, and the very next day, rookie patrolman Ralph Ireland would spot a matching vehicle parked in downtown Findlay, with the keys left in it and a parking ticket from Saturday. As he popped the trunk, he found the missing woman. Grass stains were found on her coat, leading police to believe Elizabeth had been lying face down in a grassy area when someone fired 4 shots into her back and took about $140 cash she had, as well as her glasses, camera, and small suitcase. Elizabeth's life would prove to provide more questions than answers in her murder. Born as Rosebud Hilary Hayward in Yorkshire, England, she would marry a Royal Air Force serviceman but get divorced and move to Canada, where she would meet another man and marry him, moving to Lima, Ohio with him until it was discovered he already was married to someone else, and their vows were annulled. In 1964, she married former policeman and assistant manager at a loan company, Edwin Davenport, and they moved to Upper Arlington. She began working as a secretary in downtown Columbus, but still would make regular trips over to Lima, where she was a member of an amateur theater group, performing under the stage name Lisa Nation. Lisa's friends stated that she had told them she was an orphan after her rich parents died in a plane crash, and she had spent her inheritance attending premier schools and globetrotting, performing ballet in Europe, but having to give it up after breaking an ankle. Edwin would admit that their marriage had experienced a rocky period the previous year, but things had smoothed out and he had an alibi for the time of the murder. Police theorized her killer may have been known to her, and that the trip to Lima appeared unplanned, due to the fact that she had 2 appointments in Columbus scheduled for Saturday she had not canceled. Another strange lead was Lisa had phoned a house earlier in the year that was raided as a marijuana operation near Ohio State University. A police officer answered the phone pretending to be one of the men, and a woman identifying herself as Lisa Davenport asked where the party was, but hung up when she realized she was talking to a police officer. 2 businessmen who said they saw the person who parked Lisa's car in Findlay would identify a local man via photographs, but he would be cleared in a lie detector test on May 21st, leaving police without clues yet again. But just 1 day later, back in Columbus, the gas station serial killer would strike again, this time changing his MO. Located a half-mile west on US 40 from where Joseph Scowden had been murdered, this narrow 3-story building is where a recording company owner would head up to his rented office space on the 3rd floor about 6 a.m. to discover another murder. 40-year-old Lauren Bollinger was in the process of moving into space from the second floor to the third on the night of May 22nd when someone would shoot him 5 times in a closet on the third floor. Once in the left shoulder, once in the hip, and 3 times in the head. The textbooks he had authored lie scattered on the floor around him. Bollinger had graduated from Ohio State University in 1948 with a Bachelor of Electrical Engineering degree, going on to receive his master's in 1956, and he began working as a research associate with the Cryogenic Lab and Propulsion Rocket Laboratory at OSU, but would serve as an electronics engineer at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton and as a consultant on the North American Aviation and Industrial Nucleonics Board. He also held several patents and penned a weekly column in the Columbus Dispatch on rocket propulsion and instrumentation called Man and Missiles. Recently, Lauren had resigned from his assistant professor position at OSU to start his own aerospace corporate consulting firm, and his last day was to be June 30th. Bollinger lived in a rented room at his home in Upper Arlington and was described as a quiet man who mostly worked and did not have many close friends. In his room, police discovered erotic photos of men, along with this photograph of a boy who would eventually be identified as the friend of an acquaintance at the university. As views on homosexuality were negative at the time, police stated they believed his lifestyle led to his death, and the boy was a suspect until he was discovered to be stationed at the Air Force Base in Texas at the time. Bollinger was known to frequent a second-run movie theater near his downtown office, and police also theorized he may have met someone there and brought them back to his office. Robbery was ruled unlikely, as Lauren was not known to carry much cash on him, and when he was found, he had only 52 cents in his pocket. Rumors swirled that Lauren had known Lisa Davenport, and employees at the J&M Grill that at the time was located on the first floor of the office building identified Lisa as a woman seen with him there, though he had been more recently seen with an unknown tall brunette woman and a man, all 3 drinking and enjoying themselves. Though bullets in Lisa's murder were not able to be determined as length, the bullets found embedded in the wall of the office would match those in the Columbus gas station murders. The seemingly forgotten killer had returned to stalk Columbus yet again. On May 27th, Columbus Mayor Jack Sensenbrenner would order 50 extra policemen to be hired, and a special squad of 6 detectives were placed on the case, with just one order: get the killer. They would first question an unnamed 34-year-old man, described as, quote, one of those Main Street bums who runs every time the police come. He had been seen at the J&M Grill and had fled when police attempted to question him. But after bringing him in, the man was cleared. Formed 2 days after the Bollinger murder, the Citizens Committee for Law Enforcement Assistance would raise over $2,000 towards a reward fund in the murders, but disbanded and returned the money in August after it went unclaimed. Bullets in a series of 3 service station workers' murders in California were compared to the Columbus ones, but determined as different. So too was the .25 caliber pistol of Earl Ellery Wright tested when the fugitive on the FBI's top 10 most wanted was arrested for bank robberies. In October that year, another professor at OSU would be murdered. Robert Spike was a well-known theologian and active in the civil rights movement. He had just accepted a position as professor of ministry at the University of Chicago when he was discovered bludgeoned to death in a guest room at the Christian Center near the OSU campus that he had been on hand to dedicate the previous day. While police stated his murder was unrelated, they believed Spike's bisexuality may have played a role, while civil rights leaders, including Dr. Martin Luther King himself, believed he was assassinated. To this day, Robert Spike's murder remains unsolved. In the gas station murders, after a billboard was donated by local advertisers, police would plaster the wanted poster in what they believed was the first instance of ever using this method to alert the public. And they received over 1,000 phone call tips from the billboard. Raymond Sigler had also finally been removed from bed rest by this time after spending 7 months in the hospital and then in a convalescent home. He had regained some slight mobility again, though his right arm was left with permanent nerve damage. In an interview, he stated he planned to return to work at the same gas station when he was able to, and wasn't bitter or afraid of his attacker. But, should he choose to return, Raymond planned to get off a few shots first this time. It was September 1967 when police would bring Raymond to the Licking County Courthouse to watch the trial of Thomas Eugene Lancaster. Lancaster had been arrested in Wisconsin, where he moved shortly after his brother-in-law, Robert Green, would tell police that the two of them were the men known as the Pillowcase Bandits, a pair of robbers that had hit almost 20 houses in the city of Newark, Ohio, between June and July 1966. Earning the name because they would remove a pillowcase from the homes and fill it with their loot, the men would enter the houses while people were inside, and in at least one instance left a note by a radio saying, quote, "We're going to take this, but it was too heavy." As many as 15 patrol cars, along with amateur radio operators, had been patrolling the streets of northern Newark. But Green would be caught by a simple traffic stop and was found to have stolen pistols and jewelry on him, receiving a 30-year sentence at Mansfield. Thomas Lancaster, meanwhile, would find himself arrested on the steps of the courthouse after the trial as a suspect in the gas station murders. While the Pillowcase Bandit trial was going on, Raymond had been brought in to study Lancaster. It would take him 20 minutes before he was certain, telling detectives, quote, "That's the man who shot me. Give him the works." On May 18, 1968, Thomas Lancaster would be convicted in just the Sigler assault and given 4 to 11 years. Did Lancaster commit the other murders? Raymond was adamant that it had been a revolver that shot him, rather than the automatic handgun that would have been similar to this one that was used in the other murders. Raymond Sigler would get married 1 month after the trial to a local waitress. I could not confirm if he had yet passed away or if any attempt to compare the bullets had ever been made since. In 1989, Kenneth Kissel, a coworker and friend of Lauren Bollinger, would create the Bollinger-Kissel Endowment Scholarship for students at Ohio State University. Today, the Columbus gas station murders are as forgotten in the same manner that US 40 was replaced with a greater highway. Elizabeth Davenport murder remains unsolved, but is still believed unrelated. It is likely that the gun used in these murders was destroyed or hidden once the killer learned he was being traced through it. Already with his last known murder, he was changing up his MO. Was this enough to get him to stop his killing spree? Or perhaps he took that very same road that he stalked his victims on to another city, somewhere else, where more gas stations were open late at night.